Hi everyone, welcome to MediaScope's live Friday chat. Today I'm joined by some very special guests. Nicole Sheffield, CEO of NewsLifeMedia. Welcome, Nicole.
Hi, Denise.
And Darren Woolley from Trinity P3. Welcome, Darren.
Thanks, Denise.
My pleasure. This morning in MediaScope's newsletter, I launched the 2016 predictions article, where 14 leaders from various sectors in our industry dusted off their crystal ball and looked ahead to 2016. We made it. Well done to all of us. So today I really wanted to have a chat about 2016, what we can expect, any wild predictions, and just a general sort of catch up on the market. So first of all, Nicole, if I can come to you, it wouldn't be right to look ahead before we actually had a quick talk about 2015. Yep. It has been a really big year, to say the least. It's been a busy year. So perhaps we can start off with just getting your views on, from an industry point of view, not necessarily from a NewsLifeMedia point of view, but an industry point of view, what has been on your radar? What significant events for the year?
Oh, right. Okay, yeah. Look, I think it's actually been a really interesting year. When I think about the year, I think the panic has stopped. I think in prior years there seems to be a sort of a feeling in the market and in the industry that because change was happening all over the place, you couldn't really know where it was going to settle. Whereas I think this year the panic stopped and everyone's actually focused on what they should be focused on, which is the customer, and really forgot about technology and actually sat down and how do we improve the products that we've got and the customer experiences we've had. So I think from an industry point of view, it's actually starting to mature. I think the fact that the IAB launched their mobile metric a few months ago was a big movement in terms of how we measure your mobile, which I think is long overdue. So I think there's been a lot of significant changes, obviously, through the year, but I think that's the norm and everyone's accepted that.
Yes, I agree. I think this has been a year where we've come out of denial and we've actually addressed a lot of our issues and faced up to them and talked very honestly and have seen some, businesses actually put strategies in place for the future. Darren, your view on 2015, significant events of our very busy year.
Well, I think the first one from our perspective is the media palooza, as they called it in the US, all the global media pictures that came out of the news the previous year about questioning whether the media agencies were necessarily acting in a transparent and in the best interests of their clients. So we've seen some huge changes this year. Unfortunately, I don't think many marketers actually learnt the lesson, because it seemed a lot of them are still all about media cost and rather than media value. And so I'm predicting that there'll be some more disruptions down the track as things start to settle. I agree with Nicole that this year's been a time for marketers have really started to get a handle on what these tools and all of this disruption's actually about, and you'll read in my prediction for next year, they're starting to focus on the customer. I think next year will be more of that as a lot of this technology starts to become embedded. The easiest thing in the world, in a way, it seems the hardest time, but the easiest thing is making a decision. The hardest thing is actually implementing the decision to make it work, and I think we're going to see that over the next 12 months is some of the struggles that some companies have. Yes. And so that's interesting. The other thing that I think is that's happened this year that's sort of crept under the radar is some of the big consulting and accounting firms buying technology companies, but also advertising agencies. We see Deloitte and PwC investing in buying advertising and especially digital agencies and technology companies, but also the huge amount of competition that's rising out of technology companies like Adobe, Google and Facebook continuing to offer alternatives that make the traditional advertising agencies less and less relevant. And I think we've seen that the start of that happen this year. And I think the holding companies especially are watching that closely, because it could very quickly make them irrelevant to the marketplace.
I totally agree with that, actually. I think that's actually a really good point. I totally agree with that. So many of the pitches that people are going for now, actually, particularly when it comes to digital or content strategy, the competitive set has changed. It's no longer just your advertising partner. All of a sudden, you are definitely seeing PwC, Deloitte's. You're seeing a lot of consulting firms go in there, and that's really been a bit of a eye-opener, I think, for a lot of companies that are sort of saying, okay, what are the areas that we need to diversify in to be competitive?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And Nicole, I mean, I'm thinking about NewsLifeMedia. You've launched a content hub this year. So in some ways, perhaps also stepping into that creative service offering for a client. And I agree. I think agencies are really having to have a good think about where they're offering value in an increasingly grey kind of landscape. I'm certainly tipping for next year increasing consolidation. We're not a market big enough to support all of the businesses that are in our market. I mean, thinking particularly about that digital media scape, it is just too crowded. We will have to see some level of consolidation, liquidation next year. So let's further expand on 2016, and thank you so much to both of you for contributing to the 2016 predictions article. It really is a great read. I was reading it again this morning and, of course, went through it last night before it went live. Fascinating to see the perspectives from different market sectors. I think the common theme this year has been, as Darren brought up, the focus on the customer. I think, Nicole, you also really highlighted that. The other thing that I really picked up from reading everyone's answer is we are feeling a little bullish about 2016, which is the first time, certainly since I've been doing these predictions articles for 2 or 3 years. So, Nicole, if we can come to you first to talk about, firstly, your bigger picture 2016 outlook. I'll then come and talk to you about NewsLifeMedia, particularly a bit later. But big picture for 2016.
Well, I absolutely think that there is a confidence in the market that I haven't seen for at least 3 or 4 years. I think, can you hear me?
I can definitely hear. We've just lost Darren. I'm sure he'll come back.
There's definitely a confidence in the market, which I think is fantastic. I mean, my big prediction, I think, for 2016 is that a lot of the conversations, discussions, strategies that we've seen in the last year around content will actually start to become the mainstream conversations, and they will be underpinned by, I guess, if you like, data, but not data as we know it, actually information that actually allows us to hone in and improve the conversations we're having with customers by creating content that truly connects. And I think that that will also mean that it will no longer be about device, technology, platform. In fact, it'll actually be about the content and the product and how that connects. And I think we're sort of seeing that around the edges, but I think we'll see that in a big way in 2016. I think the other big prediction that I actually didn't write about, but I think is key, is actually that the digital daily ratings that will come out next year through the IAB and Nielsen will change the landscape for digital. You no longer have a monthly number. You'll actually have a daily ratings number, and you will actually see it become competitive and you'll see it really take on the likes, I think, of television. And we've seen that in a smaller way in the video space. The growth has been it's substantial, but I think we'll see it in a really big way in 2016. And for me, particularly with having so many digital assets, it really excites me, because I think one of the opportunities is actually about creating events around the content that we create. We do it very well in the real world. We see them continue to grow and grow and grow. But actually, I think the big opportunity now is to actually, you will see online events, and not just news events that occur, and not sport events, but actually you will see things such as mainstream fashion events, Tay-Tay's concert, you'll see Vogue's online shopping night, you'll see, and you know, basically the whole month leading up to Christmas being an event into itself as we all prepare. So I think a lot of the things that you see that we very smart in how we drive our traffic, now all of a sudden we'll be able to really be able to measure on a daily basis, and that will be a game changer, absolutely.
That will be a game changer. We're just waiting for Darren to hopefully come back in shortly. He's just having some technical things going on. That's the beauty of being live. Nicole, The other thing that I thought was really interesting in the predictions article today was, you touched on it, taking on TV and the statistics that are going to be available through the IAB Nielsen daily metrics next year are going to put you on a par with television. A couple of the predictions this year really looked at, cinema as an example, really said, look, we don't have an ad blocking problem. We heard something quite similar from Lou Barrett from Network 10 about television. They do seem to be bringing that up as a selling point, that they're not going through some of the issues that digital is going through, which I again thought was really interesting.
They may not have an ad blocking problem, but they certainly have a switch across net channels problem. They have a fast forward through the ads problem. They have their own set of issues. And I think the reality is about ad blocking, it doesn't actually hurt the marketers or the clients, because you don't serve ads to the inventory that have an ad blocker. The people that are most hurt by it are actually the publishers and the content creators themselves, because a lot of that inventory can't be monetized. But I don't think that impacts the actual, in fact, from a client point of view, when their ad is actually displayed, it's going to be displayed in environments where people want to be viewing ads. And I think that actually is a whole, I think probably a whole MediaScope that you should do separately. But I think that the reality is, I love the way TV always finds an angle to make them the superior media. And they'll always do that, and they do that very well. But I think the reality is our biggest opportunity is actually about connecting with those customers. You're seeing digital growth continue exponentially. 18 million Australians are online, and an enormous number of millennials and now a new generation, which is under 18s, which I affectionately read an article this morning calling them Generation Swipe. These generations of people are actually the consumers of the products and the content, and we need to be thinking about how they're consuming it, where they're consuming it, and how they're demanding it. And actually that's where, I think in my predictions I use the term infobesity. We talk a lot about data. We have a lot of data at our disposal. I think we've got too much. I think we've got too much information. Actually, it's not about the volume. It's actually about what the quality and what you can do to actually improve the connections that you have with your customers. Hey, Darren's back.
Darren's back.
Yeah, which is courtesy of Telstra, I think.
Always like to blame Telstra at least once a time.
Well, they're my only service provider, so it must be them.
It must be them, exactly. Well, good to have you back. Thank you, and thank you for that answer, Nicole. Yeah, very interesting how we were just talking about how some of the predictions, Darren, was, as an example, Lou Barrett from Network 10 was really sort of talking about the selling point that they have against ad blocking. Cinema Dan Hill from Balmorgan, of course, said something pretty similar as well. They're coming out with a selling point that's talking about some of the issues and challenges that are facing the digital media market. So very, an interesting kind of viewpoint. One of the big things, one of the big threads this year that I really picked up on was, and Nicole touched on this in her last answer, was the focus on the customer. And I think, Darren, your answer also spoke about, or your answer for 2016 really spoke about, this is the year of the customer, which I thought was really interesting as well. Can you expand firstly on your views for 2016 from a big industry picture point of view, but then also speak about, why you think the customer is going to be the big thing in 2016?
Well, I think a couple of things have converged here. The first is, and the first observation is, the fastest growing new role in the C-suite is the Chief Customer Officer. And we've seen those, first of all, in the US, but now increasingly in Australia. There's a Chief Customer Officer at AMP. There's obviously at Virgin Australia with Mark Hassel. We've seen Westpac as well appoint a Chief Customer Officer. And you have to start asking if organisations, large organisations, are seeing a need for this. What's driving this trend? And I think it's because of the role that traditionally marketing has played, and media and advertising within that, has been almost a service supplier within organisations. For most organisations, you'll see marketing positioned, and especially marketing communications, positioned as a support to the offering, either service or product. And yet technology is increasingly making us able to influence and enhance the actual interactions customers are having and potential customers as well. So the whole question about what's the customer experience and the need to have someone within the organisation coordinate that across the organisation, not to necessarily take a command and control role, but to actually coordinate the various parts. Because, you know, we have organisations where the C-suite and the CEO will tell everyone that they're very customer-centric and customer-focused, but then immediately have an organisation built of silos, which are usually focused on service and product, not the customer. You know, it's not very often that you'll see an organisation that aligns itself to customer in the way it's structured.
And so that was one of your, sorry, go on, Darren.
So that's what, you know, one of the things that we're seeing is that organisations are starting to question the way that marketing, the role that marketing plays within the organisation. Does it have an expanded role? Is marketing actually being transformed, or the opportunity to transform to have a customer-focused business? And what do you need to do in rethinking the way that marketing does business within the business and in the way that it manages the customer experience?
And are you seeing businesses, I mean, again, in your answer for 2016, and you just touched on it then, you said that one of their challenges for this year was going to be the restructure of the marketing team to, you know, out of those silos to focus on the customer. Are you seeing good moves in that regard? What are the challenges in doing that, particularly for a larger business?
Yeah, look, it's interesting that we still have large channels within large marketing teams called digital. You know, I haven't seen the magazine team, or apart from perhaps Nicole at your business, but the magazine team, the online team. Why are we aligning marketing to the channels for communicating with customers and not aligning marketing to the customers? And why do we align it back into the business on a product basis and not actually representing the customer, be the interface or that coordinates the business alignment to actually fulfil the customer's needs? It's a very top-down approach. It's talk about it being a 2,000-year-old model that started with the Roman legions going to war against the enemies of Rome, and the structures in most organisations today are exactly the same. It's a top-down command and control, which is the total antithesis of being customer-centric.
But isn't also the broader issue that marketing is trying to reinvent itself and actually find relevance in organisations, because so much of what the traditional marketer's role, which was always the custodian of the customer, has somewhat relinquished as side divisions for social, corporate affairs, PR, procurement. I mean, now when you meet, you don't just meet with your marketing director. If you're actually having a conversation, there's 6 people in the room, and then there's another 6 from the agency who also has a social expert, a digital expert. I think that's part of the challenge. It's not just the chief customer officer or the customer focus. It's actually how are you aligning all of those components together with the information and the data that you have to truly have a lens on who those customers are, and how do you make it much more than just an acquisition driver?
Well, Nicole, I think you're right on one level, is that we used to say, or marketing used to say, that it was the custodian of the customer, but then would immediately structure itself either around the business or the channels to market. But very rarely did you see marketing actually structured to be the custodian of the customer. How many marketing teams were actually built on customer segments rather than built on the products or services that they were delivering to them and the channels that they would use to communicate with them? And I think that's why technology is actually allowing us to see that there's alternatives to those traditional models. And yes, marketing is now trying to find its place in where it fits, and it does represent the opportunities represented in the broader context. As far as the increasing number of people around the table in these discussions, that's because it's become, technology has also made it incredibly complex, and we have huge numbers of specialists now in all these areas. The examples you just gave were, social media and the digital team and thing is, again, none of them are actually aligned necessarily to customer, because already in their titles, they're talking about the channel or the technology that they're bringing to it. And that's where this opportunity exists for someone, or, the focus to be, well, here's the customer. How do we align all these specialists and coordinate them so they actually do create a customer experience?
Very good. Excellent. Nicole, I wanted to bring something up with you. You spoke, again, your focus was on the customer, but also in your answer you said that you were really positioning NewsLifeMedia brands to be, I suppose, channel agnostic. So you want to be where the customer is, reaching them on multiple touch points, reaching them on multiple platforms. I wanted to talk to you about the monetization of those platforms, and I suppose we're starting to touch on, your full page colour. The cost of a full-page colour, perhaps in a magazine, the money that you earned digital didn't make up for that loss. How are you going on monetising the different touch points? You spoke about events before. Is that something that you're really looking at as well?
Yeah, I think to be honest, Denise, that's kind of a myth. I think that was right 2 years ago, where print was trying to recalibrate by finding the same dollars in selling space in another area. Yeah. Any organisation that operates like that now won't exist. I mean, the reality is, for the last few years, our business has never been a business about a single platform. In fact, 4 years ago, 90% of our business was print, and today 65% of our business is digital, if you want the actual percentages. But that's actually not how we measure it. We actually look at who are the customer segments and how is the brand delivering to that. The example I give you, I probably shouldn't be saying this because I'm not sure it's public knowledge, but anyway, I'll say it. Vogue makes more money this year. Vogue makes more money this year than the last time it made the same sort of money was in 2007, right? 2007. It's a much more profitable business. The reason it is because it's a much more diversified business.
Yes.
And that business has grown not only in events and Vogue's Fashion Night Out, Vogue's online shopping nights, but also in its digital revenue. It has 2 million followers in social. The role that plays in amplifying native content, in amplifying campaigns and content that we create, not just for our mediums, but for our clients' mediums and how they may want to distribute it. You're talking about, an incredibly complex business, but at the end of the day, it's still about creating content that connects with consumers. Yep. That's why people come to us. And I think that hasn't changed. For us, I feel very positively we have had year-on-year growth for the last 3 years as an entire business. Certainly we have had some absolute digital stars. News.com.au has blown away anyone else. Taste has had an incredible few years. But, at the end of the day, I think diversified brands and content offerings, that you understand your customer segment and how they'll interact. And the reality is, a Vogue user online is a very different type of customer than a Vogue buyer of a magazine. In fact, demographics is probably 10 to 15 years difference in age, but actually their passion points and their interests, there are a lot of similarities. Yes. And so I think, it's really understanding that, so that when you put a real world event, which we've definitely seen grow substantially, you can have something like Vogue's Fashion Night Out in Sydney and Melbourne and have an average basket size of a consumer of $400, which beats most of, their Boxing Day sales for David Jones. That's an incredible thing. Yeah. You can't do that if you don't have a true connection and really a trust there. So, I don't even know my page rates. I don't even think about them. I don't think of my MREC rates. I know what yield is and I need to manage certain yield, but that's long gone.
So that old analogy that I've used quite often, what is it, analog dollars, digital dimes, mobile pennies, that was perhaps 2 years ago. We can't use that anymore. Out the window.
No.
Right. Out the window.
I think, from your point of view, that's right. But if I look at my mobile numbers at the moment, some of my mobile campaigns are getting 14, 15% click-through rates. So their effectiveness is so strong that you're getting better volume. Yep. So it's still a business that needs to recalibrate. Yep. I'm not saying it's anywhere perfect, but I feel very buoyant about we're on the right trajectory.
Nicole, it's an interesting marketing challenge, isn't it? Because you've had very strong brands that have had a high level of trust and engagement, which is what's made them powerful as influencers of segments of your customers, right? But how elastic can those brands be? You know, because you're moving them into events and things like that. You're creating new opportunities for your customers to participate in the brand and therefore for your clients to be able to use that. Have you found any boundaries or any areas where perhaps you can't move into, or is it still an open field?
I think it depends on the brand. So that example I gave for Vogue, I certainly wouldn't be able to do that for a probably even a Taste. A Taste is a very strong brand, but the way Taste is diversified is actually through being part of the connected kitchen and really tagging every ingredient by meta-tagging by ingredient level in every recipe, so that if someone replaces, I don't know, sour cream with cream, you'll not only know the calorie changes it makes, the taste changes. You know, I mean, all of a sudden it's now gone from being a recipe search engine, I guess, database, to actually being a tool in the kitchen. And now with our partnership with Coles, gone straight to being, you know, click to purchase, so you could buy the ingredients there. So that strategy has been diversifying about how do we make our audience's lives more, you know, more useful, how to be more useful to our customer who comes to us for you know, an expert content offering. Do I see that going into events? It would be easy to say we go into events, but actually that wouldn't be the right thing for that brand. So I think the elasticity really depends on the brand. Now, Vogue Living, of course, may end up doing, you know, well, hopefully it will be doing, but more Vogue Living schools. We're not going to go and do a shopping night, even though it may lend itself. But Neil Whitaker has a lot of expertise. He's a real very important part of the interiors industry. That brand, you know, it's the only Vogue Living in the world, so it has enormous, I mean, our digital editions do very well out in markets outside of Australia, which all of a sudden have opened up to us that 5 years ago wouldn't have been an option. Our subscribers, in fact, 22% of our subscribers are strangely from California. So, I mean, what does that mean in terms of what that means for that business and how that rolls out? So I think the short answer is, not that it was a very short answer, is it's not one size fits all, but the elasticity of the brand, you really do need to constantly measure that and look for new opportunities. And
comes back to the customer, and I think every publisher would like a brand like Vogue in their stable, Nicole. I've certainly had, you know, the Vogue effect is something that articles have been written about this year. I've certainly picked up on a few. There's not many brands in the market where the advertising is regarded as just as important as the editorial. So, you know, interesting. I think we're trying to achieve that from the digital media to make the advertising very relevant, perhaps not quite there yet. Darren, you disappeared on us just for those few minutes because I really wanted to get your view. It's something that you and I have worked on before about the issues facing particularly the media trading process. I wanted to touch base with you on that just quickly, how that's gone for this year. There's been a big shakeout with the MediaCom thing and so on, but what you think is going to happen in that regard for next year in terms of the media trading challenges.
It's interesting that the MFA released their starting paper on media transparency, and I think all it really did was to define the terms of reference for the conversation. But I think in the meantime, many of especially the holding companies, seem to have come to an agreement with a lot of their clients that they're going to be transparent in the fact that they won't be transparent. You know, especially around the area of programmatic buying and trading desks. Increasingly they're saying to them, well, you know, we can buy you customers and eyeballs at a rate that's better than you're paying now, but we won't be transparent about it. But if you really want transparency, that could actually mean that you'll end up paying more for the same eyeballs. And so there's, you know, it's a bit of a standoff, except that in a world that seems to be driven by price and how much is paid for those customers, people are going towards where the cheaper offering is. It's a real concern, you know, because in actual fact, the work that the media does at building big trusted relationships with their readers and clients, the customers, is actually valuable, and yet it gets reduced when it becomes to a trading desk or or programmatic buying down to incremental price. I think it's much more interesting, Nicole, a minute ago when you talked about the high click-through rates on mobile for Vogue, was it?
Well, that was the news.com.au, yeah.
So when you've got high click-through rates, that's a high level of engagement. And why wouldn't you be willing to pay more for a high level of engagement? Just paying to serve an ad to someone, even a real person or a bot, or serve an ad that may never be seen, and paying the lowest possible price is the strategy of someone that's just given up. I think we should be working towards, finding ways of valuing those customers and valuing those relationships and actually rewarding people that are able to deliver them.
Absolutely. There's that flight to quality is and hopefully the price will make that. I think sometimes we forget, in the whole digital media process, just how early, or the whole programmatic process, just how really early we are on that journey. There's still an enormous amount of, challenges to get through. All right. I'm getting some feedback on my talking. Can you both hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was an echo, but it's fine.
Great. Okay, good. Okay, all right. Let's now have a look at our media week. So it has, I think, got a little quieter in some ways, but a whole lot busier in other ways. Darren, if I can perhaps start with you talking about what's been on your radar this week. And, actually, first of all, sorry, just to go back, we are live. Wanted to also ask the key question, what do you think should happen next year but is unlikely? And the thing that really comes to my mind and was mentioned on a couple of the answers was media ownership reform in Australia. Might happen, might not happen. There's still a lot of problems in that Senate. So we're still, anything that goes through has to get past quite a hostile Senate. We may or may not see it. Darren, if I can go to you first, what should happen but perhaps won't happen for next year?
I think what should happen is that we start find ways of working much more collaboratively together, but it won't happen because so much of the conversation is driven by revenue. How much revenue? What's my share of revenue? To actually get that alignment, people need to feel secure in their being rewarded for the contribution they make. Everyone talks about collaboration. I'd like to actually start banning it as a word, or at least charging, a sort of swear jar fee for using it, because they want the media agency to collaborate with all the other agencies, and they want the sales teams from the media to collaborate, and everyone's going to collaborate together. But then when it comes down to how the budget is actually split, everyone starts fighting over it. So, I think we should ban collaboration as a term and find something else like, can we at least cooperate or coordinate? Oh,
good. All right. We'll put that up for the vote. Nicole, on your radar, what do you think should happen? I know I'm echoing again. What should happen that perhaps won't?
So to your earlier question, I think that I will plead the fifth here with media ownership, because I'm obviously biased, but I think it's essential. It's an archaic model, so I think it's important that we have some level of reform. I think, and what you said earlier, Denise, actually the main reason is that there is going to be more and more consolidation, and that's actually, for that to happen, we need actually to have I think a media reform position. But my big thing that I really think should happen, but I really sadly don't think will happen, is we actually truly embrace diversity, and we see our marketers, media agencies, advertising agencies, the people that are supposed to be the creative thought leaders and the risk takers in our country actually truly embrace diversity and not just give it lip service, actually look at improving the number of women that return to the workforce after having children, improving, the actual tax position for childcare, which is ridiculous in this country. I think there's just so many things that need to happen. So I sadly don't think it'll be next year, but has to happen. And I really think our industry should be at the forefront creating that change. And sadly, we're leaving it to the banks, the financial institutions. Crazy.
Yeah, Nicole, and not just tokenism either. Actually proper, opportunities to express diversity. And, people say on a meritocracy, but of course, all you need to do is make sure that the meritocracy or the merit system that you're using it to judge by is actually inclusive in its own right. I mean, the problem is that a lot of these values that are used to select the male, pale and stale that we see in senior management was actually the same rules that were set up by a group of male, pale and stale. So Denise, I was happy when I was looking through your predictions to actually feel like I was included in a very diverse group of people, at least on gender. Perhaps in future it'll also be on other criteria such as race and religion and politics as well.
I said to, look, I mean, both of you know that I'm quite active, particularly on gender diversity in the market. Peggy's List has been one initiative that I've launched in the last couple of months, which is going great guns. Talk about that another time. But I said to someone the other day, I'll be very happy when I see someone making a sales call on an agency in a hijab. I think that will be absolutely wonderful. That will be a great day, I think, for all of us. But I agree, and I've said this before, as an industry, we should absolutely be at the forefront of diversity because as an industry, again, we do have some level of influence on the community and, we can be a thought leader on this as an industry. I think we could do it quite easily. Lots of work to do. I mean, again, I'm doing it in my own small step through Peggy's List and some other initiatives that are kind of rearing its head through that. But yes, 2016, little small intentional steps, Nicole. That's what I think we'll be going for. But yes, the banks, PricewaterhouseCoopers, we're bringing them up again. They've got a fully flexible workforce now. I spoke to someone the other day that said that they're moving into Barangaroo in middle of next year, and they're all hot desking, so they don't actually have a permanent desk. I think that's a really interesting way to manage your workforce. Wonderful. And for me, media ownership has to happen, may not happen. Lou Barrett also brought up media ownership in her answer and said, we will need to see greater consolidation there. I suppose my fear is that we will lose we'll use multiple voices. That will be intense. Yes, it's hard to say, Darren, isn't it?
Just on that topic, I think it's important that whatever happens, it actually encourages more voices to come into the media. And, technology has now allowed people to enter into the media space at a relatively low cost. So I think the danger would be to have anything that consolidates all of the media, and I can't see that happening, but consolidating all in the media in only a few hands.
Yes.
Would be what we need to ensure that it doesn't do. But I think the biggest problem is that it's a model that was designed in the days when it was all about the channels, and digital convergence means that it's no longer about owning a TV station or a publisher or it's all sorts of things. I mean, you're very much a publisher here, Denise, and you've got multiple digital channels that you use.
Yes, and look, the barrier to entry is, you're right, incredibly low, and I get contacted almost on a daily basis by businesses who have entered the market, started a blog, started a magazine, started a digital magazine. I get that a lot too. Or got a billboard somewhere. I get those kind of calls as well. Of course, the entry's easy. It's the monetization that is incredibly challenging. And that's for a big business down to, a small solo run business like mine. The monetization model is perhaps not so apparent yet. Let's now come back to our media week. I'm sorry to swap and change there a little. Nicole, if we can hear about your radar for the week. I want to touch base with both of you on the AMIA liquidation, particularly. Very sad. Nicole, you're on the board of the IAB, I believe. So wanted to get your views on that, but anything else also that's really been on your radar this week?
Well, this week's been a big week, Denise. We had Tay-Tay on Saturday night, and she did great traffic for us. All of the, oh my God, didn't Australia and Sydney specifically love her? And we actually launched a fabulous thing on Taste called with GLAD, which is Glad to Help, which was a helpline, a digital helpline, which was really interesting because I was wondering who are the, 3 weeks out of Christmas, who's going to basically message their various helps. Australians are having a lot of problem with getting their Pavlova right, let me tell you. So that's been actually massively successful. So many questions about that. So that I'm really excited about that. In terms of, I think really for us, it's been an incredibly busy week. I think as we're getting closer to Christmas, normally we see quietening down. In the last few years, this is the busiest week. The next 2 weeks for us are absolutely, bookings are really strong and people are sort of almost quick. We've got to get our position in. What was the other question?
Amy.
What was on the radar?
Amy.
Oh, Amy. Oh, I'm really disappointed about Amy. I have to say, I only just recently I've spoken at a few of their events, and I think that they reached out to a really independent, creative, entrepreneurial element to our industry that you wouldn't often see at other events. And they really weren't focused on media. They were focused on all sorts of technology innovation. I think that's just really disappointing. But to your question, do I think there are too many industry bodies? Look, I think that unfortunately, clearly there must be for them to have closed shop. But I actually think, I think every industry body has to have a clear purpose. And often when those purposes are sometimes confused, that's when challenges arise, because we only have so many hours in a day and in an evening. We only have so many dollars that we can support so many industries and things. So it really needs to be, what is the purpose of this and how is it going to help what we're doing, whether it's getting our message out or sometimes it is simply networking, but normally it needs a greater purpose than that. And but I am very disappointed about Amy because they're a great organisation.
I agree. Darren, your Media Week and your views on AMIA, your role with the AMI, the Australian Marketing Institute. I believe you're the chairman.
Yeah, chair of the board. And so I'll just stick with industry bodies. And I think one of the key things is that we certainly need industry bodies, but we need them to be well managed, and well supported. And so it's really important, to your point, Nicole, that they need a very strong and clear purpose, and they need to make sure that they're focused on fulfilling the needs of the membership and growing that membership base. I think there are way too many organisations generally in Australia that struggle with the state-based system. One of the strengths of the Australian Marketing Institute is strong representation in every state. But then you also have to have quite a significant infrastructure and process to be able to support that as well. And I think there's probably a lot of organisations generally, but specifically in marketing, media and advertising, that need to look at, are they still relevant? Do they have the size and mass to be able to have the level of management and infrastructure? And we see the very successful ones. I think all organisations go through ebbs and flows, but perhaps we're going to see more of these industry bodies either merging or closing over the next few years. Because the other thing is that we are seeing a convergence in the industry. In some ways, there's multiple areas for all these niche specialists, but technology is bringing us all together. So why not do the same with the organisations as well? And so, change is good, and rationalisation, as long as it leads to improvement, is something that we should be encouraging.
Absolutely, and I think that we'll have to see some level of rationalisation in 2016. Many awards, many events, many industry organisations, many training courses, all doing the same thing. It will have to come down. You just brought up awards.
Here we go. after the entertainment industry, are we the most self-congratulatory industry in the world? You know, the number of clients that go, well, who's the best at doing this? And they start talking about awards. Awards have got nothing to do with being the best.
No.
Many awards are about being able to fill in a very good entry form or doing the work that everyone likes, but it's not necessarily the best because it depends on the criteria. I think, you know, if it's one thing the industry could do is halve the number of awards and actually make them more meaningful. Because I don't know about you, but I've walked into agencies that almost have to have a second and third office space just to put up all their awards.
I have actually done it on MediaScope, and I will share this link on Twitter a bit later, but I've done an overview of all of the media awards for the past 3 years. And I must admit, it is a bit of an exercise in copy and paste, putting that together, and you're exactly right. I think awards are wonderful. I'm a judge in them, like you are, Darren, like you would be too, Nicole. I like attending them. Everyone has a great time, and we should be recognising, and celebrating how hard we work. But there does seem to be a lot of awards, and I think we do need to remember that they are the winners of the enterers, not necessarily the winners of the best work. And as long as we keep that in mind, then knock yourself out. It seems to suit everyone involved, the giving and receiving of awards. All right, so thank you very much for joining me. It's been a really great chat. Here's to 2016. I think it's going to be a really exciting, challenging, bumpy and enjoyable ride. Next week on the live chat, Mumbrella and Megan from PricewaterhouseCoopers will be joining me, and we'll be talking about 2015, the significant events that have happened during the year. That's bound to be a really good discussion. But in the meantime, Nicole Sheffield from NewsLifeMedia, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. Darren,
thank you.
Oh, thank you. Darren Woolley, thank you so much for joining us as well. Darren's book in the background, the 2015 book out now, Darren?
Yes, it is. It's available online and at all good e-book stores.
Very good. All right, well, I'll put a link up to that later. But thank you very much also to everyone who's joined us, both live and also looking at the replay. The replay will be up on the MediaScope's site in about an hour. So I'll just stop recording